So that's up to date on that. As you all know, I'm sure that in Congress there is a new bill called S720, which has large bipartisan support because it was written by AIPAC, and in consequence is kind of being rubber stamped. But we are resisting that as well. In fact, I've just heard that there's going to be a piece in the New York Times that I've read about that. I'm not sure which day it's coming out, but hopefully soon. So we're fighting back, and we're making some progress. You know, we are no longer a silent voice. Our voice is now being heard. So what you've done with your film that the people in Beirut watched tonight, I assume they've already watched it, is beginning to bear some fruit. So all the work that we do to try and and to describe a different narrative is beginning to bear some fruit, which is encouraging.
This is a question from the audience. It says, during your speech addressing the UN 5 years ago, you quoted a lyric from one of your songs, quote, "Everyone has recourse to the law and no one kills the children anymore." Do you think this post-war dream is still achievable in this day and age?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, of course, one must try to remain optimistic. However, one should also be realistic and understand that the forces arraigned against us, in my view, largely of commerce, are extraordinarily powerful, which is why we need to use every possible opportunity that we get, like this one happening right now, to reach out to one another across international borders, so that we can organize our resistance to the dystopian Orwellian nightmare that we all live in, and to vocally and powerfully as we can resist the notion that perpetual war is here to stay. Because if it is here to stay, it won't be for all that long. I.e., they will kill us all, and so yeah, my optimism is not unbounded, but I feel that there is a lot of love in the world as well as a lot of greed, and there is always the possibility that maybe the love can transcend the greed, and we will make progress towards treating each other as human beings, rather as obstacles to the amassing of fortunes. Does that answer your question?
You're optimistic, that's good. Actually, could I ask you a question about, you've talked a lot about this already around Radiohead. I think you said you were trying to get in touch with Tom York. What would you say to him if you were able to get in touch with him about what happened?
Could I have that? Can I hear the...
Sorry, the video is paused, but we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, if you can hear me, that's good. Sorry, what was the question? It was something to do with Tom York.
I know you tried to talk to Tom York and you haven't been successful. What would you say to him if you did have the conversation?
I would ask him whether or not he thought equal human rights for all people all over the world was a good idea, just as a basic principle, or whether he was content that there should be different laws for different people, depending on either your race or your religion or color or whatever. And I would like to see what he had to say, because if we could take that baby step and get him to agree that he thought that yes, people should have equal rights, then I might be able to proceed with him and then say, well, do you believe then, for instance, that Arab people, Palestinians and Christians living in Palestine should have the same rights as under the law as Jewish people? And if he could agree with that, then I might say, well, would you be prepared to take steps to encourage that for a baby step? And we could agree to that. And I would then say to him, what would be the steps that you would take if you care about those things? And then I would be interested in his answer. Because if his answer is, what I would do is go and do a huge gig in a stadium in Tel Aviv, built on the ruins of a Palestinian village, I think that should do the trick. I would remonstrate with him and suggest another course of action. I might suggest to him that he might answer the call from Palestinian civil society to engage in boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, to encourage the Israeli government to stop flouting international law and to stop colonizing land that doesn't belong to them. That's what I would do, I'd say, roughly. But he ain't going to talk to me, so.
There's a kind of follow-up question about BDS. This is from the audience.
Yeah.
A culture festival, Pop Culture, will be taking place next week in Berlin in sponsorship with the Israeli Embassy. 5 acts have withdrawn after BDS calls. Will you be calling UK artists, especially young fathers, to withdraw too?
I've already signed the letter asking people to boycott that festival. But that only happened yesterday, I think. You know, these things happen very, very fast. So I got the call to join the voices of people asking artists not to go and perform in Berlin yesterday. So I said, yeah, of course. So I signed that letter, but since then I haven't heard anything. But that was only yesterday, so we shall see. Yeah, it's they answered that one.
This is another one from the audience. It says, Noam Chomsky and a lot of others have written a lot about this issue, but it doesn't seem to have made any difference. Why do you believe that we can succeed now after all this time? Or why will this documentary make any difference?
I live, so as you know, I live in the United States of America, and I have watched things changed in the 11 years that I've been involved in this movement. Things have changed dramatically and radically. We now do have a voice of sorts, and our voice is getting louder, which is why their attacks are getting. This is why AIPAC and the ADL and the lobby and Stand With Us and all the other offshoots of Hasbara that all come from the Israeli government. This is why they are now resorting to lawfare. This is why S720 is before Congress. But people are asking questions about it now. So we have forced Israel out into the open to make moves and declarations that they didn't have to 10 years ago, because there was no question in anybody's mind, except Noam Chomsky and me and you and a few others. As you know, you here as well. You teach in Massachusetts. You know that you've experienced also what I'm saying. Okay, it's a long, hard struggle, but we are being heard, and so now they're resorting to the bill trying to criminalize BDS, and they're coming up against the First Amendment rights, and which is great for the movement, because willy-nilly they're having to have the conversation with us now. And many Jewish people in America have got more information and look at each other and go, yeah, this isn't what our faith is about. This is not what Judaism is about. We're a humane religion. We don't want to be oppressing, colonizing. We don't want to be party to the kicking down of people's doors in the middle of the night and the arrest of their children and torture and incarceration without trial and apartheid and all the other hideous things that are going on. We don't want to be part of that. So there is a resistance growing in the United States in the Jewish community, which is great to see, as there is in the Christian community as well, Presbyterian churches and other churches. But the main resistance is in the young people on the campuses of the American universities, particularly in California. But it's all over North America now. And it is spreading because this is a black and white question. You know, people go, oh, it's complicated. No, it's not. It's very, very simple. It's a very simple question about whether people should have equal civil, human, political, and religious rights or not, or whether some people are more equal than others, to quote George Orwell. Anyway, sorry, that was a long answer.
So, do you think they've overreached here, given, I mean, it seems a very clumsy effort to stamp down on free speech, and it will not survive any kind of constitutional challenge. Do you think this is a sense of their desperation and that they've overreached in response to the opposition that's been rising?
Definitely. They're having to retreat from this position, or some of them are, or some of the members of Congress are, because it's too embarrassing not to. You know, I actually met once and know very slightly Kirsten Gillibrand, who's a junior senator for New York State. And when I saw her name attached to this bill as a co-sponsor, I was flabbergasted. And through a friend, kind of was remonstrating. I'm not sure that my remonstrations had anything to do with it, but she has removed her name now because she realizes that it makes her position as somebody who can be taken even half seriously as a progressive thinker, or as a human being, really, to be attached to this bill is insane. You know, this bill within it has, it not only makes membership of BDS a federal crime. The penalties that are written into the first draft of the bill are so draconian that I'm laughing at it now, but they could fine me $1 million and send me to prison for 20 years for talking to you, which is pretty bizarre in the land of the free. So yeah, we're making progress, and I'm happy about it.
Do you think it would help the discourse in the US if there was an Arab lobby as well to counter the Israel lobby?
You mean a Palestinian lobby, yeah. or do you mean united, Arab states, or?
Well, I guess a pro-Palestinian lobby of various kinds.
Yeah, of course. Of course it would. But there is. And it's the students on the campuses, and it's you and me. And it's all these good Jewish people I'm talking about who are talking to their neighbors, whatever. We are the grassroots movement that exists here. We are the lobby. We are representing the Palestinian people. That's what we do. That's what this whole movement's about. That's what your film is doing, obviously. That's why I'm talking to you now. And it's it's a giving back in a way. We all give to one another, and we do it across international boundaries. I'm going to tell you a very quick story because you're in Beirut. I was in Beirut in 1961. I was having a swim in front of the Phoenicia Hotel, and it's a long story of why I was there, and watching my passport and my belongings, with an eagle eye, from about 50 yards out, and I saw some kid steal my shoes. So I waded as fast as I could to the shore. He'd gone, of course, disappeared into the crowd. There was a cop there. In those days in Beirut, they used to have cops just to help tourists or foreigners. So I explained my predicament to this cop, and we went to look. And by a miracle, we saw this kid on the other side of a road, like 50 or 60 yards away. Cop sees the kid sees the cop, their eyes meet. You can see the kid thinking whether he should run or not. He decides that's not a good idea because they're local people, so they must know each other in some way. So anyway, the kid comes over, the cop jabbers at him, jabber, 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 jabber. I'm really pleased. I can see he's wearing my shoes. He takes my shoes off, he puts them down on the neutral ground between us, and then the cop jabbers at him some more, and then he goes like that with his fingers. And he shoos the kid away, and the kid disappears into the crowd. And I'm super indignant. I go, what are you doing? He's getting away. You know, because I'm as dumb as shit. I'm 18 years old, English kid, you know. You can't steal people's shoes. You go to court and they send you to a boys' club or something. So, in England. And this kid's being let off the hook. So I remonstrate angrily. The cop looks at me pityingly, and he says, he speaks to me in English for the first time. He looked at me very pityingly, and he said, he is poor. And in that moment, you know, I said, I wrote a short story about this, and I said later, if we're 18 years old and dumb as shit and think we know everything, and we meet that cop, you know, it's the luckiest thing that ever happens to us in our lives, because in that instance of him saying he is poor, I realize just how dumb and rigid I am. And I say in the story, I begin to learn about love. So in Beirut in 61, I started to learn about love from that cop and in that one tiny bit. So this is what we all learn from one another, from different cultures and different ways that we treat one another. I'm rambling again. All I'm saying is I want to come back to Beirut because I always loved that city, and I have done a few gigs there since those heady days, and hopefully I'll be there next year.
The next question, it says, I'm an active BDS implementer. However, if art is meant to evoke humanity, isn't an artistic boycott counterproductive? Israel has artists we need voices of humanity to go and inject that into Israel. That will influence public opinion. So I guess it's a question about the effectiveness of a cultural boycott.
Yeah. Okay. Well, clearly I disagree with whoever's asking that question. If they think it's not effective, it clearly is effective. And what I always say to people who say, isn't there something better? I always say, well, what? You know, I would have, if Tommy Hawk had spoken to me, I would have said, listen, I've talked to so many Israelis and so many Palestinians about how much good you might do to go and sit and sing songs around the campfire, Israelis and Palestinians together, and how that can progress the political situation, how that can, for instance, shine light on the occupation, on the apartheid, on the roadblocks, on the unbelievable repression on the 2.2 million people living in Gaza are up to their eyeballs in their own crap because there's no electricity, no water, no whatever. They're being destroyed. They are subject to a draconian regime, the Israeli government, who is trying to destroy them as a people and eventually will succeed if not called to task. So, wouldn't it be lovely if we could, let's end the occupation, get rid of all the settlements, create a Palestinian state, divvy up the land in a fair way between the Jewish people and the Palestinian people. And when we've done all that, let's sit around the campfire and sing together. But first of all, I once heard Gideon, my friend Gideon Levy say, in answer to a question like this, he said, somebody steals your car, do you want to have a conversation about whether it should be painted a different colour? Just give me the car back first, and then we'll talk about all that other stuff. So the occupation transcends all of the rest of it, and no amount of singing songs together is going to change the policies of the Israeli government. Only the withdrawal of American cash is actually going to do that. So this is actually, this battle is being fought on the campuses of the universities of North America and in the synagogues and churches in North America and in the boardrooms and in the divestment meetings and all of that. Because without American money, this apartheid regime would collapse. So that's where it's being fought. So no, Israeli and Palestinian artists singing and playing music together is not going to make an inroad into it, which is why I support BDS, because it's what the Palestinian people have asked for. They have asked foreign artists, and in fact they've asked civil society and the rest of the globe to support their struggle for freedom and justice. So, which is what we're trying to do. And they didn't ask us to go and sing songs around a campfire. They asked us to protest, and they set up a picket line, and they asked us to not cross that picket line. And I think that they lit on the right tactic and the right strategy, and it is working. So I thank the questioner for his or her question. No, I think you're wrong, and I think BDS is right.
I have to say, you were very prescient about that this battle would be fought on American campuses. You said this actually way before it became a real kind of issue, so you obviously saw where this was going to be going in the future. So the last couple of questions before we let you go. What was the song "Leaving Beirut" about?
It was about me being stranded in Beirut because I was with a lot of friends, not a lot, a few university friends trying to go to Baghdad in an old ambulance, and it broke down in Beirut. And so in the end I thought, I'm going to go home. So I set off to hitchhike home. Leaving Beirut is about the first night on my journey hitchhiking from Beirut to Cambridge in England. And on that first night I was taken in by an Arab family who lived just north of Beirut on the outskirts. And that's what the song is about. I was shown enormous generosity and kindness and hospitality by these people, and that made as much impression on me as the kind cop. Well, I don't know if I think he probably was a kind man, but he certainly understood the predicament of the boy who'd taken my shoes. And these people they had very little, very, very little, but what they had, they would share down to the last crumb with a stranger who appeared to be in need. And I'll never forget that great kindness and generosity either. That's what's fun.
Last question. Can you tell us more about your new album, Is This the Life We Want, and how it may relate to current events and to the conflict that we're talking about?
It sort of speaks for itself. You should, when we've finished or whatever, you should stick it on a turntable and play it if you want. All people can find it. It's out there. We're doing 3 or 4 songs from it on the North American tour that I'm doing at the moment, and people seem to get what it's about. It's all in the title. Is this the life we really want? No, it's not. We do not want to live in a state of perpetual warfare so that rich people can line them and buy even more Gulfstreams and lead their empty, bitter, mercenary, selfish lives in even greater luxury. We do not want people in refugee camps and in danger and being blown to bits by the ordinance that we make our profits out of. That is not the life we really want. We want the life, what we really want is we want to live in the world that I lived in for those 12 hours when that family in the northern suburbs of Beirut took me in when I was an 18-year-old. I wasn't a refugee, I wasn't in any real trouble at all, but I was nevertheless a traveller and who could be subject to the hospitality and generosity of others. That is the life that we really want. We want to use that as a model for the way that we behave, all of us individually, but specifically and particularly our governments, which is why we have to organise ourselves to persuade our governments that they should be representing we the people, not they, the military-industrial complex, which is who they are representing at the moment, unfortunately. So the battle goes on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roger. I know you've been really busy. Thanks for taking this time out.
No, at all. I was really happy to be here. Thank you.
And I think I can say people are looking forward to you coming here whenever you're going to come in the next year or so.
We hope you're not
Well,
lying.
it's been a pleasure.
Okay, thanks a lot, Roger. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers, Sue.
So we have a few more questions here that were actually more about the documentary and its production, so I will, would you like me to ask them to you? So the first question that actually struck me was a question about, would you show this in the US? That's the first question. And the second one was claiming that this documentary is mainly for the US and the Western world. We know all about this. Why would you show it here? So two opposite questions.
It's absolutely right. It's about the US and US political culture and US public opinion. And we would love to show this in the US. But it has been blocked from being shown. It did not. We submitted to a number of film festivals. Yeah, maybe it's not a very good film. I think it's quite good. But we didn't get into one American film festival. And if you can't get into a festival, that's the first route into, for publicity. And so it's just been ignored. We've sent out press releases. No media has picked up on it. In one sense, the film would absolutely predict it. Right? That's the sad thing. In one sense, we knew that the occupation of the American mind works in two ways. As I said yesterday, in response to the question, one is the messages it puts out, and the other one is blocking anything that will be against that. So that the monopoly of the discourse, and so it's been a really frustrating time for this. We can't even get it shown in We can't even get it shown in liberal, independent theaters in the States. I submitted it to the most kind of left-wing liberal theater in New York, Film Forum. They refused to look at it. We have a local, I live in the most liberal place in the United States. I live in Western Massachusetts, in something called the Five College area. You could not find a more liberal, progressive place. And we have a local theater, a local independent theater, and they refused to show it. They said it was not appropriate for that. And so this is, in one sense we knew it, but this is the one topic that even people on the left will refuse to deal with. And so the first battle we have is trying to open up that space. And actually, when Roger talked about BDS, and I actually think what they've done with, they've got this bill before Congress that, it's essentially, it's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing to ban BDS. So you can't talk about, a peaceful boycott. And I think they've overreached. And actually, my own view is I think the more discussion of BDS, the better, even if it's trying to ban BDS. Because there's lots of people who've never heard of BDS. And so when the discussion now is, well, why should BDS be banned? It gives you an opportunity to have that discussion. And so I think they've really overreached. In one sense, I hope they pass it, because it will not survive a constitutional challenge, and it will keep it going, and it will show how ridiculous it is. So that's my hope, and I hope our film, there'll do some space in, I'm getting so desperate now. You can almost hear it in my voice. This is, we spent a lot of money on this, money we didn't have, a lot of time on this. And right now, I am very close to just giving it away. I'm very close to realizing we can't get it out. We just get to putting it on YouTube and to getting it out. The second part of the question was, why show it in these kinds of places? Well, I think actually you know a lot about the conflict. You most probably don't know a lot about the propaganda. And there's no reason you should know about the propaganda. I think that's what the film is about. The film is not about the conflict. The film is about the propaganda, and the film is about why the US acts like it does, and why there is no movement in, why the US supports Israel to the hilt the way it does. And I think that's useful information. I think one of the things we need to know is what we don't know, and to admit what we don't know, and to be constantly engaged in a process of education. I hope this tells you something about what's going on internal to the US when it comes to this issue. The other reason I like showing it is I like showing the film where we can have discussions and where I know there's going to be an appreciative audience. Roger is on. I'm sure one of the reasons Roger is on tour right now. Roger he's quite old. He's 73 years old, and he's on this massive tour. And I think one of the reasons is it nourishes him. Performance nourishes you, and when you're getting that feedback. And one of the reasons I like showing it is actually I like the feedback from the audience. I like seeing. Today was a little bit different. I've actually the audience today seemed to be more stunned than American. The only place it's been shown in the United States is Palestinian film festivals. That's the one place we've been able to show the one space. But I think the reaction today was actually very. I think you were stunned. I don't think you could believe what you were seeing. You didn't even laugh at some of the funny parts of it, which some of them were quite ridiculous and funny. But it was almost too serious to do it. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Let me just second that. It's very important for me because the first time I watched the precursor to this, the Peace Propaganda and the Promised Land, it really opened my eye to how it is very calculated, very rational, very systematic, and very regular politics. It's not a conspiracy. It's not this anti-Semitic belief that the Jews own the media in the US. It is actually business as usual. It is lobbying, it is public relations, it's a lot of money. And I think this is extremely important for us to understand it here in the Arab world as much as it is in the US and anywhere around the world. And on this note, I just want to ask these three quick questions. May I suggest, this is the question, may I suggest you give more substantial proofs by giving examples of who really owns the media and how the AIPAC and the lobby have controlled the world media? That's one. Question, how much of this information and material collected was a surprise for you? And there was a question asking, how did you get that material, I believe?
You may have to remind me of the question.
Okay.
So what was the first one?
So about
who
owns the media?
Yeah, as Jad mentioned, there was a previous film we did about 10 years ago called Peace Propaganda in the Promised Land. And that was more about that. That was actually using Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman's propaganda model, in which and applying it to this particular case. And one of those, and Herman and Chomsky talk about filters, and one of those filters is ownership. And that's, so we talked about that in that. But I don't think this is not about ownership in that way. This is not about Jews controlling the media. Okay? This is about institutional control of American elites. The propaganda would not work if it did not, because sometimes people have seen this, like Zionists have seen this film and said, oh, you're just saying that, it's the old canard from, the Protocols of Zion. You're just saying Jews control everything and they control the media. And I think that, for one thing, that's not what we're saying, and it's also not what's true. That's not why the propaganda works. And you've got to, and what we try to do is, ownership is one aspect of it. But I think what's much more important is the coalescence of interests between Israel, between the right-wing Israeli state and American political elites. And if they did not coalesce, then the propaganda could not work, no matter who owned the media. The propaganda could not work. And that gets us into, that gets us away from conspiracy and simplicity. It gets us away from simplicity. Because it is a simple, why did it look like this? Well, Jews own the media, and therefore, if you change that. No, we could change the ownership of the media as long as it was still controlled by businesses with business interests. The coverage would not change one iota. And so I think we've got to get to the deep kind of institutional reasons why discourse looks like it does. So what was the second question?
How did you collect the material and do the research? What was the process?
Yeah, well, it took us about 5 years to do the film, which is way too long, by the way, to make a film. And we essentially were engaged in a research project. We had 2 or 3 people who were working on this almost full time, watching media, and we were just collecting media off the air. We were recording media. I was going to say we were lucky. That's the wrong word to use, right? Because we had opportunity because there were 3 wars. Not wars, we had 3 attacks on Gaza in 2008, 2012, and 2014. And so we had a wealth of information from which to draw. One of the things we do at the Media Education Foundation, and I encourage all independent producers to do this if you're looking at media, is we never ask for permission to use this material, to use all the media material. We operate under something called fair use that says under certain conditions, I believe in copyright, don't get me wrong, I believe in copyright. I think intellectual property is really important. If you want to support creative work, if you want to support documentary work, if you want to, copyright is important if you want to support authors. But fair use says under certain conditions, copyright does not hold. And the conditions are if you're commenting on something. You can't comment on something without quoting it, without showing it. And so we operate on that basis. So we collect lots of material and use it without permission. What was the third?
There's a question about first how can they get access to this film? I'll let you answer that. And what are the steps that we can take as Arab journalists to reveal the truth? I'm translating.
Yeah. The first one I can answer actually. One of the things we did, normally the films we produce go to the academic market, and they're priced to sell to libraries. This one we didn't. This one we actually wanted to get out straight away, and so you can actually watch it for. Actually, someone told me you can watch it on YouTube. It's in 3 different parts for free. Or if you want to support us a little bit, you can go to a website. It's called occupationmovie.com. And on that site is, the film is there and you can watch, it's a Vimeo site and you can watch it for $5. You can also buy the DVD, I think for $20 or so. And we've had some people who bought 10 DVDs and given them to friends. And so we rely, given the kind of, the censorship that's occurred on this, we rely upon informal networks. And so I hope that you will send this out, go to theoccupationmovie.com, look at the film, and send information out to your own social networks. I hope you will tweet about it, I hope you'll put it out on Facebook, I hope you'll do all that stuff, because that's the only, we have to operate between the cracks. We have to operate in that way to try and get word of this out. The good thing is when we can show it, it seems to work. But the key on getting these things shown is you've got to get it shown in places where people wouldn't ordinarily go to a documentary. Because if you make a decision to watch this documentary, or if you make a decision to go to, you're already halfway there. You're already more than halfway there. And we've got to get to people who've never thought about this before. And so for us, the main place we want to get to, and that we encourage, is the classroom. And it's the college classroom. Because that is a captive audience. Students have to watch. If a professor says this, we're going to watch this, we're going to talk about it, and it's on the test, they have to watch. And we want to make use of that kind of captive audience. So if you know professors, you know teachers who can help get this into places where it wouldn't otherwise get, I would love to do it. I'd also love to, I don't know how to do it, I spoke to someone before. I had an idea to, this was the 50th anniversary, I said, of the occupation. I would love to actually get this and show this in Palestine, on the West Bank and in Gaza you must just be totally confused as to why the US acts the way it does.
You're going to get an invitation from Farid, he just said. Yes.
So I would love to get it there, and once you can, the response we've had when we've sent this out for blurbs, we've never had a movie that's got as many blurbs on this. We have a great response from Anan Ashrawi. I showed it in London last week at SOAS, or not last week, but last month. And Ken Loach was there, the great British director, and we got this incredible quote from him as well. Gideon Levy, so that's why it's so frustrating. We know, if it wasn't such a great film, I'd say, okay, time to move on to the next one. But we know it is actually a very, very effective tool. And so however we can get it out to whatever audience we will do. And if you can help us in that would be fantastic. So please put it out on your social networks.
All right. There's one more question. So do you consider this an example of fighting propaganda with propaganda?
No. This is not propaganda. We are doing intellectual, serious analysis. We are honest. We are not just telling a one-sided story. This is not just, this is the pro-Palestinian side, and that's the way it's this kind of moral equivalence. And this is not that kind, I would argue with anyone about this content. This is objective content. I regard this as journalism. Journalism in the sense that it's the search for the truth. Journalism doesn't mean that you can't have a point of view. That's not what journalism means. Journalism doesn't mean that you have to be objective and you can't, right? Journalism is the search for the truth. The journalism is search, and as long as you can back it up, as long as you have evidence for what you are saying, I think you can say the strongest things you want to say. But you've got to have that evidence. So no, I'd say this is fighting propaganda with scholarly analysis put into a form, I hope. I mean, this could easily take the form of an article. It could easily take the form of a book. No one would ever read it, and it would be totally ineffective. And so it's taking that scholar, and which is what the Media Education Foundation does. What we do is we take kind of the latest cutting-edge research in whatever field. We've done over 150 films over the last 26 years, and we put it into a form whereby you don't have to be an expert to engage in it. You can actually, you have to think about it. You do have to engage with it. You can't just put it on the background. But if this is something that you're interested in, or if you're willing, then it's going to be useful. It's going to be useful to you. And so, no, it is not fighting propaganda with propaganda. It's fighting propaganda with the truth.
طيب thank you very much. شكرا لكم. عندنا نهار طويل بكره. rehearsals من الصبح والغداء. على الساعة 9 بدنا نكون هون بكره. اوكي. presentations بعد الظهر، بعدين استراحة قصيرة على الساعة 7 مش 7:30 على الساعة 7 هون لتوزيع السيرتيفيكتس الشهادات، ومن بعدها دغري على